Welcome everyone. We're going to discuss a very important area as we transcend into next level occultism and what's been going on for many years here, and that's the use of anything from digitalized photographs to computerized systems to now the apps on phones, etc. Does any of this work? Does any of it have any validity? This is Grand Gnosis Master Dr. Thor Templar, and I'm going to discuss this very important area which we have to proceed very carefully with. And there has to be a greater understanding of what's going on in these areas, because people, often, a lot of people, assume that there's some sort of great empowerment because something is a computer. Well, computers are pretty dumb, stupid tools. They're programmed and software is put into these things to have them do specific tasks. This does not give them any kind of intelligence, AI or not. And there's really no such thing as artificial intelligence anyway. That is another term to try and devalue you as a high consciousness functioning person. And the taking out the human element of anything entirely pretty much voids what's going on. While you can process information, data, and this data can form a certain energetic field, but at a very low level, is not a potent way of doing anything. We need to understand. For years, there has been some computerized radionic units, and many of them have been electrified, etc. Now, what does this all mean? Is magic an electrical process? Is psychic empowerment the biophysical? Well, these things need to be handled. There's too many people putting out programs now, and they're spellcasting programs that are software. There are many of these that are radionic based and virtual radionic machines, etc. And there is some interesting ones that are out there which actually, as you change in terms of the radionic machines, that as you change the dial on the actual virtual radionic machine, that it actually has a picture of the potentiometer, the actual switch, which works by by turning it, you're adjusting the energy going through it, to put it simply. And it shows that in the diagram. So the virtual machine will show a pictographic image through a computer, which will actually have that physical change in it. Now we get into a lot of things here, and we need to really define all of these technological toys or tries at taking what is very advanced higher consciousness empowerment and putting them into very easy to use tools. We need to know what to throw out and what to keep in all of life. I mean, keeping silly old traditional things that don't have much value in magic and in the occult sciences is something that I've always been in favor of. On the other hand, we can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. We have to be careful that we throw out the worthless, stupid, ceremonial things that are there strictly to psych you up or to get you in the mood or whatever the reason for it, that really have nothing to do with the process. They're strictly there to assist you. So these certainly can be modified, changed, and even discarded to some degree. To think, though, that you can put something into a machine to have something do it to you, that you can do it for you, and that you can digitalize high energies that are coming from your consciousness or from higher energetic beings, spirits, whatever you want to call them. In the occult sciences, these are energetic fields or streams we connect to. Is pretty silly at this point because they cannot be defined properly. They are not in the electromagnetic spectrum. At this particular time, there is proof that electric, not computerized, but electric psychotronic radionic machines do work better than the non-electric ones, that they work faster, dramatically faster, and this has been quoted by many researchers who were involved in the practices, including many healers. And of course, this makes sense if you understand how you use the electricity in whatever you're doing. But you've got to understand that we're not using crude Hertzian fields when we're performing magic, biophysical, or doing traditional psychotronic radionic work. These are not electromagnetic Hertzian fields that are doing work. That is a different area of the advanced sciences where you're using Hertzian fields. This is Royal Raymond Rife was a person who pioneered using Hertzian frequencies. Andrei Pisharek was involved in this as well. And Hertzian frequencies are physical, 100% easily measurable physical energies, which are in a completely different spectrum than we have when we get into consciousness machine energy. And that's what we're really talking about here is consciousness machines. Consciousness machines are not computers. They're not anything that does something automatically for you. Machines are fantastic tools to assist you in life. When they do something for you entirely, they're taking out the human empowerment, which cannot be replicated by machines. That's why they need you, particularly when it comes into the biophysical reality. So to think that a computerized unit that punches out numbers into itself is going to produce any great effects is just not been proven to be true. And it doesn't even make any sense that this would particularly work. If we're putting out Hertzian energy fields, well, this again is something very different. Machines do that. You get a frequency generator. You put a certain frequency in you. There are frequencies that heal, hurt, etc. And this is a very well-known and proven energetic fields. But they are not magical fields. Magical fields do not work like that. Now, they do work by piggybacking on Hertzian fields and electromagnetic energies, which is when you're using more advanced types of amplifiers and other things. But generally, the best kind of amplifiers are not your solid state ones, which don't pick up this kind of consciousness energy. Generally, you have to use the much more sensitive and interesting tube amplifiers, which are known to have certain resonances, which are used by musicians in particular, because they produce a much greater and purer tone, and they're picking up energies that solid state can't. Plain and simple, you can't really make a good sound technology without using some sort of tube amplification. Now, they have made mini tube what would you call them, chips, etc., that are put in units now. And I don't know if they're continuing to do this, but this is what gave music back its entire high-quality sound when they start using miniature tubes built into resistors or other chips or whatever you want to call it. So this is how sound was then fixed, by using the old technology but updating it to that point. So using that kind of resonance is very, very important. Computerizing something, particularly on a screen that's in front of you and punching your picture in and a number, is having a very low energetic effect. It just doesn't work. It's just as simple as that. People are getting nothing more than a placebo, nothing more than a certain psychic stimulant crutch from it, and nothing more is happening. If you were to physically print out each one of those tunings that you had in, let's say, a virtual radionic machine, you would print it out and it would show the actual potentiometers with their settings on it. Well, this is another thing. Now you're causing an energetic thing by having a actual symbol that has been produced that is produced for a particular use. Now, there's a symbol for healing, there's a symbol for money. There are many of these to generate prosperity. Now, when you produce that in a radionic machine and print it out, then you are having a certain symbolic empowerment there. But again, that's because it's printed out. Like any other symbol that is printed out, you have an energetic form there. Just producing it in a computer is something that doesn't generally work. There has to be a lot of research here, but when you digitalize things, you are taking a lot of the actual consciousness empowerment that is what this is all about, coming from the inventors of all this, meaning the human brain and consciousness. When you start removing that from this higher technological reality of consciousness machines and consciousness practices, which is magic and all these other things, biophysical as well as a consciousness thing, once you get into that and you start eliminating that and trying to get into the grossness of it, you lose it. It's just like the difference between synthetic vitamins and natural vitamins. There is a different energetic field around them. They work within the body differently. Now, when it comes to a physical chemical, you're getting a slop over effect, as I call it, is that these synthetics tend to work to some level. Now, we really don't know how much any of this stuff works that is synthetic to a great degree. We do see, it does seem to get effects. But there's a big difference between a synthetic and a natural. And naturals always seem to blend with the body better and work better. When it gets into pure energies, when you start creating a machine energy, it is nowhere near what a consciousness energy created by the human mind is, which is extremely complex. The human consciousness, the human reality, there's this whole thing. And of course, because of the lack of money, these things have not been properly defined. It all can be defined, and it is in a gross manner where you can test these energetic fields using very skilled operators who use dowsing type equipment, pendulum, certain other meters can be used to test these fields in a kind of gross way. If the money that was spent in trillions of dollars to blow up this planet and to keep rich, evil people richer was put into these areas, we would have all this defined today. But of course, that's not how this plane of existence works anyway. We would have basically conquered this plane, and the whole idea is not to conquer this plane, and certainly that is working well. But we see so many things that are digitalized. One of the plain examples here is the digitalization of consciousness fields in photography. Now, some people are using regular digital cameras and they are getting some of these gross effects, and this is pretty rare. But traditionally, throughout the occult sciences, and which has worked extremely well, and I've had a lot of success with it myself and have many photographs, so you use a Polaroid instant camera picture of things. Now, this means the developer of the light energies come back into the camera and are then triggered in a chemical reaction right there. And as such, they are able to pick up a lot of variances instead of sending them through a process. Now, even regular old chemical-based photography film used to show a lot as well. There was a lot of based in that. And I believe this is because, again, it's a chemical reaction. And the chemicals tend to pick up these consciousness energies, where digital, their basic job in a digital picture is to eliminate any kind of strange, unusual, and to make everything kind of neutral. You want to homogenize the picture, and then, of course, you can go even further with the digital process and eliminate any irregularities or highlight other things that you desire. Well, when you highlight something that you desire, you're changing that energetic field. If you want to make it look spooky, well, that's not the point. Again, you're changing it. If you think that looking spooky is bad and you want it to look prettier, well, again, you're eliminating those things. Now, you can't do that with a Polaroid picture, and generally you can't do that if you have old 35 millimeter processing where you're using some sort of chemical thing. Now, digital is completely different. You're getting all this digital printing out, as I've just mentioned. So, there's gross things produced digitally that generally are corrected either automatically or you do it, and this can be a problem. So, getting digital pictures to produce phenomena aspects to doesn't work. Using Polaroids does. And I've got some amazing spirit photography from Polaroids and energetic pictures as well from Polaroids. They work because it's all there. So they're capturing that energy. Now you can see some of these things in a Polaroid picture if they're very gross. Many times you'll take 5-10 pictures of a particular spirit area, and you'll see nothing on those except one of those pictures shows. Why is that? Well, we don't really know. But the energy is still there, even though it hasn't produced in a physical image that you can see. The actual chemicals, which has the actual photonic energies from whatever that is, which hold those energies, then shoot into the camera where the chemicals take in the photonic energies and hold it there. As such, those chemicals are filled with that energy, whether you see something strange, bizarre, unusual or not. It is still there. The energetic print of that particular person, place, or thing is there. In rare situations, you will see glows around people. You'll see spirit images. All of these things do happen, even though it is difficult. You just can't get these all the time. I've taken probably thousands of photographs and maybe produced 30, 40 things that showed interesting energetic forms. That's the way it is. So, but as I just mentioned, the digital process doesn't work. Now, computers are very much the same way. The fact that you're flashing a number and you're flashing a photo or you're flashing some sort of even magical image through a computerized system is producing very low-level energetic fields. So these don't really produce anything. People like it because it's a gimmick and nothing more. None of the research bears out that any computerization in this process assists. Now, there is a computerized, there has been different computerized radionic machines. The most famous is the SE5, but there still is some manual tuning done there. It actually takes quite a bit to go through it. So it's not really just an automatic process, even though there is a larger automatic process to it. So there's a lot of manual processes to the SE5, and as such, there seems to be a greater area of success there. It's very difficult because of the problems with all of the field of radionics, because it's if you get into documenting particularly healing people, even if it's spiritual healing, which is how all this starts, consciousness healing. I don't technically like that term. Consciousness, I think, is better, much better than spiritual. That you get into problems. But these units have been used for 40, 50 years now, and a lot of people claim that. But that's a pseudo-computerized unit, and it runs something. And I tend to think if it was all that great, that it would be in much greater use than it is. It's a computerized, nicely produced machine, and as such has that appeal to the people that want to invest in it. I personally don't think it's necessarily worth it. I have not probably the only radionic machine I really haven't worked with is the SE5. But the point is that there seems to be a lot of people that like it, whatever that means. But it's a pseudo-computerized unit, and I think that the results that you gain from these things are much, much reduced than when you're using other ones. Now, when you get into classical radionic machines, and I've worked with just about everyone, we're talking about from original Abrams units to all the drowned units to De La Warr units, going up into Hieronymus units. When you get into all these different units that are produced out there, you get into a very interesting research area, and we open up all of them. We will in the future be actually showing these online. What's in these units? We're going to be showing exactly what's in there and how it actually they're expecting it to work. But when you get into a lot of these things, and what's happened in modern times in the last 15, 20 years, people have made very simple, based on Ruth Drown units, which are just flow units. They just have potentiometers, maybe a few resistors with wires going in, and they have not really made it electric whatsoever. There's no really electric functioning to them, and as such, people still claim that these work. But it has been shown that non-electric units are much weaker and take much longer to work. They do work. It's a psychic tuning process. And there's a lot of problems in this entire area because almost any psychic tuner works, and people have gotten to the point to say you don't need a machine whatsoever, which I highly disagree with. You can't do everything mentally or keep track of things well. Secondly, you should be using some sort of empowered machine. Now, this doesn't necessarily even have to be electrically empowered, but a few components, potentiometers help, crystals, other things you put in units, do give it a major boost. Then there are amplification, which is critical. So the whole idea of using the proper amplifiers, which are basically tube amplifiers, or even solid state, as some people have used in the past, do dramatically improve the working of these units, and it's been factually proved. Just as plain and simple as that. So it is more than just a psychic crutch. You're using these cruder electric. Of course, when it gets to tubes, it's a pretty complicated consciousness process going on there. There's a very unusual resonance that tubes create, which is a precursor to the actual laser, by the way. A tube is a primitive laser. So the whole idea is that there is something to proper combination of consciousness energies and higher understandings of more elite electronics past these solid state, which is great for a TV and a radio, but isn't good for consciousness technologies per se. So there is something to that, which just shows further that a process is going on. But it is secondary to the operator's consciousness energy, which they are drawing from the cosmos, channeling this into a particular machine, which is then amplifying it. When you go through a dialing process, or you have some sort of energetic defined template or specimen, etc., because it's more than just dialing, but there does seem to be a great importance that the operator participate at a high level to get the results that they need. It's difficult just to punch in numbers, but this does connect to the cosmic empowerment stream of energy. So if 12, 12, 6, 4, 10 put into dials is the number for helping your hair grow, well, if you do that as a person, you are connecting to that, and your consciousness is assisting the process. So these type of things do work, and of course this is all about next level occultism, which is getting away from having to be a master at anything to get the results you need. But the point is that ultimately there's always a certain level of home treatment people can do, and when it's required to go to a professional like a doctor. Once the over-the-counter remedies and your basic understanding, and you've taken certain supplements and done all you can and maybe used some advanced science tools, well, there may be a time when you have to go and get a particular pharmaceutical drug or a particular treatment that you need a professional to do and give you. So not everything could be, and the same thing goes with radionics and other areas. So the digitalizing, as it is with photography, doesn't work well. And the more you digitalize a process that is non-physical in nature, and again, let me restate, the point is that frequencies, which are not radionic frequencies, are not Hertzian, they're not measurable through common What we're talking about here, when you get into frequencies, is you're talking about Rife frequencies, actual Hertzian frequencies, ultra low frequencies, ultra high frequencies. These are physical Hertzian fields that can be measured and have a very strong and potent impact on the body. They can cause cancer. They can cure cancer. There are stabilizing energies, such as the classic Earth energy, which is 8 hertz, is very stabilizing healing, which is found in almost all positive healing areas. This was researched by Andrei Pusharek and shown to be very powerful. But these are Hertzian energies. When you get into occult science energies, consciousness-based energies, cosmic empowered energies, these are not, in the common technology of today, able to be measured with a traditional meter. As I've mentioned, you can measure these and they can be proven and their effects can be shown. All it takes is to get a group of people doing it, but why would anybody want to support an alternative field that jeopardizes the trillions of dollars that go into all of these other energetic areas, from medicine to energy, etc.? Bringing in new technologies or even thinking new thoughts, even if you're in the oppressive regimes that work in these areas, is highly frowned upon and you're persecuted. So this is a problem, and they hire criminal outlaw guns to come after you. The debunkers, the skeptics, these are all paid criminals to lie and cheat for the other side. So this is a fact here that we have to have. So we have to clearly specify the difference between consciousness-based occult science energies, cosmic streams of energetic scalar waves, and common field energies, which are Hertzian or measurable with the technology that is common today. Now we come into two different areas there. Now what they try and do is mix this when you make a digitalized product or a computerized radionic unit. Generally, this don't work, plain and simple. If these things work to the level that everybody says, I have to wonder why everybody isn't having treatments by or buying one of these machines if they're so able to kill all the bugs in the world, cure everything. I have a real difficulty dealing with that. So, and of course, as I said, there's always the rub. You can talk about things, you can't prove things. There's all sorts of problems because of the lack of freedom on this planet, because we allow hoodlums to run the world. The bankers, their criminal police that enforce their law, that they're bought, the militaries, etc. So no one can come out and do anything based on free. There's laws to so-called protect people, and oftentimes these do nothing but keep the power structure, the failed, worthless power structure, particularly the healing industry, who's achieved absolutely nothing, by the way. Lots of gossip, everything's going to be cured in the next years. Yeah. I've heard this for 50 years now. We have absolutely no major breakthroughs in the medical industry since penicillin, plain and simple. Penicillin and antibiotics has what's keeping everybody alive and giving them a longer, somewhat longer lifespan is because of that. People died because they got a bad cut. That generally doesn't happen anymore, even though it does still happen. People die from all sorts of things that you don't quite understand. So the point is that when we get into all these areas, it's important to people to clearly understand the two differences. And when common people come out and try and digitalize, they try and make virtual radionic machines, we run into all sorts of problems here. And it doesn't seem like anybody in that industry, and particularly the Radionic Association, which seems to encourage virtual radionic machines, and another radionic school or something that seems to perpetrate these kind of misinformation, thinking that the machines don't matter, that it's just a psychic process, is missing the boat entirely. It is not. It's a higher consciousness process that needs the assistance and amplification of sophisticated consciousness-based electronics. And there are electronics that fall into that category. Again, you're getting something to assist you. when you're using tube amplification, other things, well, this is kind of what we could call fuzzy electronics that have interesting functional factors to it beyond the crude. When you start pumping energies into lasers, they are carrying all the consciousness energies. So we need to look at these things. You can also combine that. You have any electronic circuit forms a symbolic energetic field that will assist you. Now, these produced on a computer screen, which are non-permanent and non-physical, don't produce good results. If you print them out, you have now created a power sigil or symbol that can work and work amazingly well, which is why printed out radionic circuits, which the classic one that is offered online and elsewhere, is wrong. The actual schematic is not drawn properly. But regardless of that, when you make something like that, it's creating a general symbolic and even a sigil, a magical sigil, and everything is a magical sigil to a degree that is physical in nature, or at least has some sort of physical quantity to it, even printed on a piece of paper. So if a schematic of a particular circuit is producing a certain amount of energy by itself. Now that's a low level. You then move it into its more physical, where you make that circuit, and then you combine other things with it, and you have a very powerful consciousness machine. Well, very, very important, because there's all this computerized and all this digitalizing is not a proper use in consciousness technologies or the occult sciences in general. We do have to also be careful of that. Pretty much 99% of all the radionic equipment produced today is all based on just simple little wiring plans. Now, these do work as a psychic crutch, and they are helpful. Basically, they're just very simple. Now, the problem is that they don't work fast or well, plain and simple. The older non-electric things, unless used by an extremely advanced skilled person, which the average buyer is not, are not going to get very great results with them. But they are great psychic tuners. If you're trying to tune into something, sitting there and concentrating, trying to get the rate, as it's called in radionic, the numeral code that is put into anywhere from 3 to 9 dials on the average, does form a biophysical strong connection. And these things have proven to work, although slow because they're non-amplified. There's no amplification in there. They'll put in a little crystal or some quasi misinformed orgone. These things don't help the process very much. So you need to amplify things on a much higher level to be able to do all these things and to get the fast results. So the electrification, or using electrical carrier waves, can assist and have proven to assist the process dramatically. And of course, this makes sense. If you're amplifying things through an electrical circuit, which are crude Hertzian waves, and you piggyback onto them consciousness energy, well, we live in that, and these waves, these Hertzian waves, are going to reach the subject through the atmosphere or directly at a much stronger level, and they're going to affect that person. Now, these waves probably have neutral effects unless they are piggybacked with energetic scalar waves, which is a fancy way of talking about these advanced energies. By piggybacking these scalar waves onto these, you get much greater effects because they penetrate the human consciousness and spiritual conscious systems, which we are a physical reality. We are physical beings, which too many so-called alternative people want to ignore. We are physical entities. We have this non-physicalness to us, meaning that we're made up of all these energetic fields, but everything is still connected to some sort of physical reality. If we weren't, why would you bother to want to be healed? You're just a non-physical entity. Why would you want to heal yourself? You're a physical entity, and you want to be empowered. You want to be healed. You want to have certain energetic fields around you. This is all part of the process of understanding the difference between digital energies, these created fields of controlled energies, if you can call it that, compared to consciousness energies, which is this vast energetic scalar informational field, which is enormous and would probably, as in olden times, as computers took up entire buildings, but a consciousness energetic field, if put into a digital format, if that's even possible, would take a computer the size of the Empire State Building. There's just so much information there, and is not the crude based. So this is very important to understand. So if you're getting telephone apps that are doing spells and other things, these are nothing more than childish little toys for you to use. Now, there is that bioenergetic aspect to it, meaning the fact that you're concentrating on something, you're sending out, quote, psychic energy, otherwise properly known as the biophysical, and this does work to a certain degree. But you could do the same thing just by writing a note or just concentrating on something. You're not really drawing any energy in. You're just focusing your mind on a particular target that does. So the process that they're going through is doing nothing but a psychic crutch for you yet again. And so all these apps, any spell casting computerized programs, are nothing more than fun little psychic crutches that don't do anything. If you like it, if you like the movement of it, the interestingness of it, and you concentrate on it, and you use it as a motivator and a stimulator, as a way of doing rituals, well, it'll assist you in that. But the non-physicalness of it means that it's not working very well. It's not producing great energies because it's in a digital computerized format. So it's not really transmitting the energy to a target well because of the non-physical nature of it. You need the physical nature of it, whether, as I've mentioned, that's printed out. And then, of course, you use that physical nature to create all sorts of non-physical fields that then are projected to a particular target. But to start off with a non-physical amplifier just doesn't work. It's just the way it is. And we need to clarify this until something else can be proven to us. That somehow in some digitalizing or computerized process that energies are being created of a strong value. Creating minor energies of this sort and thinking that this is going to have an effect without you concentrating on it is nonsense. The really only value of a computerized program is that thought form that's created while you're setting up that program, while you're inserting that so-called sigil, or while you're actually concentrating on the particular target and the particular sigil. This then creates a thought form, or you're basically doing a biophysical projection because of that. And that's the value that those things have if it's something you like. But it's a bad way to work with things. It's really not a high level. There are problems with a lot of computers. It depends on people's how they can handle the different energies that computers put out, the screens, etc. Well, hopefully everybody's using the more neutral screens by now, the LEDs, and computers are not putting out the toxic energies they used to. But you're still looking at a particular process, and it would take a lot of proper thought form visualization to use these programs properly to get any kind of effects from them. But the appeal of them is how easy it is to use these things. Yet what energies are you moving? And what energies is that machine creating? Well, it's not creating anything, and it's certainly not amplifying anything. So we have to be very careful when we get into all these things. Using apps, using software as spell casters, as radionic machines. None of this seems to work well on any level whatsoever. And there has to be, of course, further research. I don't know if there's some way to get these, but the nature of these things is that computers are good for certain things. They're not good for everything. And that's a fallacy that a lot of people think, that computers can be used for everything. No, they can't be used for anything. If you want to pick up certain energies, you're going to have certain things you attach to a computer. So it's not that. Computers just can't do something because they're programmed to do that. There are certain inputs that have to be in, etc. And what are they doing? Well, what are you saying, that dots and dashes in some way, when put in a particular category, produce high consciousness energies? Well, that gets to be a little bit ridiculous there. While there may be something to that in a very gross manner, because the dots and dashes, or circles and whatever it is, dashes, could be extrapolated into the fact that this is a symbolic image unto itself, creating some sort of computerized sigil. Well, if this was done in a more controlled fashion, well, maybe there's something to that, but I'm still not sure that this could be used in a computerized system. It would have to be printed out in a physical sigil form, because then you're generating something. If something's constantly changing, you're changing the sigil, and as such, you're disempowering it and losing the connection to the cosmic empowerment, the higher consciousness level of empowerment that these things provide. Hopefully that's clarified things here about the difference between digital empowerments and traditional. And as with everything, people, it's always important to question all authority. Believe nothing, and always remember there is no reality until the occult scientist creates it.